Hi, it's time for GreenShortz, and today we're going to make a simplified version of my Black Soldier Larvae Composter. This thing's done great in terms of turning food waste into biomass of soldier fly larvae, which then go to feed my neighbor's chickens. Amazing composter, but this is probably one of my most complex builds. I want to show you how this bin looks after about a year and a half of use. This thing is held up really well. The only real degradation that I've seen is that the aluminum flashing has corroded. This is a pretty acidic environment, as you can imagine. Let's see if we can spot any soldier fly larvae at work. The bin is still just getting started up for this season. There's some soldier fly larvae there, and I actually see some different sizes. They're actually attracted to that rotten watermelon. I actually got the food waste from a local restaurant across the street, public house, and that's going to be how I'm going to try and keep these guys fed over the summer. Because my family doesn't generate enough food waste to keep these guys fed while they're ripping it up. Because when these multiply and get going, they really go fast. Two adaptations we're going to make to the soldier fly bin. Number one, I'm not going to use this trash can. The trash can and lacing up the trash can underneath, that was an incredible amount of time. So instead, I'm going to use a tarp to build the containment section of the bin. The tarp is going to be much easier to install, and actually that idea came from a comment. Instead of my recycling bins that I used here for the capture basins, I'm going to use milk jugs. Actually, there's an adult soldier fly coming in right now. One thing you'll note, a soldier fly flies erratically. So there's an adult soldier fly female, and she is looking for a spot to lay her eggs. And she won't actually do that on the compost itself. Right over here you can see on the edge of the trash can seam there a little cluster of eggs, that little white, yellowish white area. Those are soldier fly eggs. They've got about another day before they'll hatch, and then they'll just crawl from here right into the compostable material. So I'm going to build my frame much of the same way, with these corner posts and then 2x4s along the edge. I use 2x6s on this one. And for the lid though, I'm going to just use a piece of galvanized roofing that I have on hand. The roof could be made out of many different things. Actually, you could probably find some political signs to make your roof, and that would actually be a good use for political signs, because, well, we won't get into politics. Alright, so there's our overview. Let's get on to the build. A few other materials we're going to use for the build. I've got a scrap lid for a bin that I used for an earlier worm composting bin. If you're curious about that one, I'll put a link to that here. And then to build the box, I've got some scrap wood, some silt fence posts that are oak, and they're square. These are pretty beefy, so I'll need to be pre-drilling these. And then I've got a scrap of 2x6 and some 2x4 here. A couple of those that I'll find the good parts and use those. I guess I'm using a piece of scrap galvanized roofing for the roof of this. I don't want my bin to be any longer than that dimension. And the width is 16 inches, so we'll be going with a 14-inch wide box. And those, of course, are outer dimensions. Alright, so during today's video we're going to have some unique background ambient, and that's because a school of rock is happening across the street at Music on Main Street. Kind of wanted to give you guys a little look at this. One, because it's totally cool, and also my son happens to be at the music camp, so let's walk across the street and take a look. here's the amphitheater. These guys are getting music training all week, and then it culminates in a concert on Saturday night. Talk about awesome confidence building.
Let's try the second verse.
This is Trevor's band. I'm not sure where he is. Maybe he's getting his daily lesson.
We have a picture.
All right, bass lessons. Woohoo! I heard a song that I thought was in your set, so I came over to film. But
huh? No, I'm just getting practice.
yeah. So we got 2 feet by 14 inches by 42 inches. So these are actually exactly 4 feet long, including the point. So I'm just gonna cut it in half, and I'm gonna use the point on 2 of the legs. All right, so of course I've got my Twisted Sharpie out for the markup. I'll just mark this at 2 feet. Of course, my friend Greg at Greg's Garage makes these. If you'd like one, I'll put a link in the description. The nice thing about this too is that the steel is reusable. When my Sharpie wears out, I can just pop it out and put it in a new one. It's twisted. Just gonna true this up since they're not exact. That's pretty, actually that's exact. Go with that. Nice. And the second. We got a staple in there. Hang on. Whenever you're using reclaimed materials, it's also important to watch out for nails. Here I've got a staple from the silk fence in here. Pop that out before my saw blade gets beat up. Yeah, the cut bridges the 2 sides of the staple, so it's just the middle I was worried about. Since my 42-inch dimension is an outside dimension, I'm stacking the 2 legs beside my side piece here in order to measure my 42 inches. I'll cut the first side and then use it to mark the second side. So for the end pieces, I'm going to do the same thing. 2 legs on the edge to get my outside dimension and to mark the width at 14. Now we'll assemble the box with some 3-inch construction screws. Star drive. Because I'm dealing with oak legs, which is hardwood, I'm going to pre-drill before I screw. 1, because I don't want it splitting, and 2, it'll just make the screws go in a lot easier. So I'm going to mark my dimension for the 2x4, and then pre-drill, and then the 2x6 and pre-drill. So I'll make sure I avoid this hole with this hole. All right, Legs are all pre-drilled. Now let's assemble the box. I actually want the difference in the dimension between this stuff and this stuff to be a little inset. That'll be a nice little detail in this piece since it's gonna be kind of rugged. So I'm gonna set the legs up and I'm gonna clamp them for this first screw. Now let's attach the sides. Alright, since this is getting a little unwieldy now, I'm gonna stand it on its end and assemble the last side. Alright, well I am pleased with how this sets up. It's stable. It feels strong, and all I gotta do now is add in the insides here. That sounds easy, but there's actually a fair amount of work involved. So we're gonna start with the areas where we're gonna connect the ramps, figure out how our chute's gonna work, and then we'll think about adding the tarp. Let's just say it's pretty clear that form follows function in this case, but that's the goal, functionality. I'm also going to widen the opening on the top of the milk jug. I want to make sure I'm not cutting this top here because I want the handle to remain structural, because we're actually going to hang this in the opening underneath the bin. So I'm actually going to hang the milk jug underneath this edge using this large landscaping spike. Kind of like this. But to do that, I'm going to drill a hole through the leg to accept the spike. Just mark the outside here. Thankfully that staple's out of the way. And then we'll drill. Alright, so I'm going to secure this with some construction adhesive and then cut the end off. Did I mention that form follows function? So this ended up being a lot messier than I thought it was going to be. So to lock this in place, a cleaner method would be to come in with a small screw up underneath there and let it bite into the stake and the wood, and that will lock it in place. The construction adhesive would work fine too, but just a little messy. Let's see how this works. Alright, that did it. I'm going to go ahead and leave this junk on there just because, well, if I have any soldier larvae that are neat freaks, they'll just have to go out the other end of the bin. Much cleaner. Now let's grind off the ends. Alright, so I'm going to use some 2x4 to make a brace that's going to go in between the sides here. It's going to sit below the surface, and it's going to provide a way for me to mount the ramp that's going to direct the soldier fly larvae to slide down into the milk jug as they crawl out of the compost. Which is one of the most amazing things about the soldier fly larvae, is that they will self-harvest. When they're done consuming compost, when they're ready to pupate, they crawl out, and that's how you catch them. Rather than digging through the compost, it's messy. So, we're gonna make a bracket for the ramp on both sides with the 2x4. I want the angle on the outside of the 2x4 pretty steep, looking like it's dropping right down into the milk jug. Basically, these soldier fly larvae are going to crawl up this ramp out of the compost area, and they'll go over this lip and drop down into the chute, right into the milk jug. Once the angle's set, then I'll come back with the screws on the bottom, tighten it up. Alright, so the frame is complete, and we've got our milk jug hanger mechanism in place. I'm really happy with how that's going to work. Nice and simple. One hole, one piece of metal, and a milk jug. What a great thing to reuse. So the ramps are in place, and now what we need to do is add in our tarp here that's going to act as our compostables cavity, where we're going to hold all the biomass. So what I like about that is, number one, it's going to be easy to install. We'll have some wrinkles to work with, but I think I've got a way to deal with that. But I also like it because I kind of think it's going to simulate like the carcass of an animal, which is where these soldier fly larvae would be in a native operation, if you will. So where they're going to be consuming roadkill or dead animals in the woods, that's gonna simulate that better, I think, than the trash can. We'll probably have that about, you know, 1.5 feet deep to allow us to have a lot of biomass in there. Although soldier fly larvae tend to like to work toward the surface, so I don't necessarily need to have it all the way to the ground. I also don't want it on the ground because I think it's important that we don't let critters that might be chewing through that close to it. I'm going to cut up this lid to use to help provide my locking tabs along the top of the bin, and then also the curved pieces will be used to direct the soldier fly larvae into the slide and then down into the milk jug. So let me process this into basically long strips and cutting the curves out. I'm going to use the plastic, and this is number 2. It's not labeled, but I know that. Actually, LDP number 4, low density polyethylene. So it is not, no BPA in this plastic. It's also nice and soft. I'm going to use this instead of the flashing on the last bin, which has corroded over time. Still functioning, but it's starting to break down. So I'm going to give this plastic a try and see how it works. This plastic is actually soft enough that it can be cut with scissors. The edges of the lids are thicker than the middle section here, but I should still be able to cut them. I'm going to keep this as big as possible because I'm not sure exactly yet how I'm going to use these curves. Now let's add the tarp. This is a piece of tarp cut from a much larger one. You can see it's been used. What I'm looking for though is something that doesn't have holes in it. So I'm going to start by tacking down one side, then we'll pull it down into the middle, and then tack down the other side. My nailing strips are just some fence wood that I've ripped down to 1.5 inches, the same width as the short side of a 2x4. It's going to allow it to sit right on top. But I want the tabs that are here to extend out at least 1/2 inch beyond, so that when the soldier larvae come to the top of the compost bin, they hit that and it makes them go this way instead of trying to climb out. If they try and climb out, they won't be able to make that turn. Just using some joist hanger nails, about 1.25 inches. Now flip this around. Now I'm going to push down to create the compostables holding area, or the belly of the beast. So I want it deepest in the middle here, and then allowing it to kind of ramp up on the sides. Of course, this will be filled with compostable material, so they're not going to have to climb up a steep slope necessarily, but they need to be able to get up and out. Of course, the texture on this will make it climbable. So for reference purposes, that's about 11 inches deep to the bottom. I'll have a couple of folds to deal with just because of the shape of this, but that's okay. Just make sure they're nice and flat like this when you tack them down. I'm gathering all the extra material and putting it into one fold here, another one right here, another one here. This of course will all be anchored down on the ramp, so even if they get underneath here, they'll have to crawl out when they get up to this point. Again, just like the gut of an animal. Alright, now that our sides are tacked in, let's trim up the tarp. So I think I've decided I'm going to use the curves, something like this, where they're cut down a little bit more. I can screw them in nice and flat. They'll basically pick up this tab underneath and then act as a funnel dropping down into the milk jug. So let me trim this up and see how it fits. Take that part of the handle off, and then I'm going to do a start right against that edge and then move out. I'm not going to cut that off yet because I don't know how much I'm going to need. Take this little curve off there. That's too tight to cut with the scissors. Cut that fin out. Since I know this is HDPE number 4, I can actually make sure it goes in with my grocery bags. All these little pieces like this, I can put in my grocery bags when I recycle them. Same polymer. Make one adjustment here. And that is, I'm going to take the whole extra curve out here and then back. So this will fit in here kind of like this. I'll cut this back so this can go over it like that. Put a screw in the side here, one here into the ramp. So before I screw any of these in, I'm going to trim all 4 pieces. Now I'll interpolate this on the other side here. Grab some assorted drywall screws from my screw bin, and to continue with our found materials theme. But if you have to buy screws, lath screws work great to hold plastic down like this. Got that wide head on the top of them, and even that 1-inch screw should be fine. All right, let's screw them in. The place I need to be concerned about getting nice and tight is right here, where I need to force the soldier flies over that lip and down the ramp instead of behind it. If I get that nice and tight, there's no way they can get in there. So I'm going to do 2 screws, one here, one there. When I started this project, I wasn't sure how I was going to make this transition, but I'm actually really excited about how I'm able to use this lid like this. Just perfect. Maybe one more right there just to really tighten that corner. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the other side, but I'll spare you the details. Both of the side rails are in, and now I need to make a triangle piece here out of the second lid that's going to form the center portion of the ramp. Then these 2 side rails will go together in the bottom, and they'll form a chute that's going to drop right down into the milk jug. So the measurements on this I measured were 9.5 inches across, 6 inches down, and then 1 inch across at the bottom. So I'm going to measure this out and cut it out on my second lid here. So 9.5. And then 6 down. Be about 1 inch across on the bottom here. And then almost freehand. Now we'll cut it out. Or I'll cut it out. Cut it out. Actually, I don't want this along the top. So I'm going to make an inefficient cut here just because I want them to not be able to catch on that. Alright, the ramps are cut. The ramp's gonna go in like this. I'm gonna secure it across the top here with a row of screws. I'll make sure I'm not bowing it up here at all. That looks pretty good. I'm not going to put the one in the edge just yet because I want to do that once I've got the side rail pulled over and they're joined together at the bottom. This is a perfect use for all my odds and ends screws, at least the short ones. And drywall screws work great, especially the coarse thread, because they cut into 2x4s really nicely. Something like this. Here at the base of the ramp, we're going to pull these three pieces together to form a chute. And to do that, I'm going to just screw them together using these little AC duct screws, nice and small. There will be a point sticking out the back. I'll just have to remember that they're there and not stick my hand back there. Alright, these are flathead screws, so I'm going to use the hex nut on it to lock it in. And the other side. Alright, here's a little look at the chute. Looks like from the top, the milk jug just hooks right in like this, right underneath like that. So the soldier fly larvae, when they're pupating, they come out over the edge, drop down right into our milk jug to be harvested. Then I just come back, grab this, check out my harvest, and then head next door to feed the chickens, handle and all. Alright, lastly I need to put in the screws that go here that lock these two pieces together on both sides, and then I need to repeat it on this end, but I'll spare you the details. That's called cutting corners. Alright, the ramps are in. So I need to drink some more milk so I can have another jug here. A little bit more than the original. Alright, one last thing, the roof. The roof structure is going to be really simple. Just two 42-inch 2x2s connected by two 2x4s. And I'm actually going to leave the end open like this because I want the adult soldier flies to have access underneath the roof to get in to lay their eggs. Alright, so I'm going to screw this together. Now we'll add the roof. See, this will be the back side here. Just using some roofing nuts with the washer. Alright, the roof's on, and yeah, I know there's no rake to it, but all I gotta do is have this slightly uneven on the ground and the water will run off that way. Or this way. And I'm really not concerned about a whole lot of water pooling on the top of this anyway. So, alright. Let's grab some hinges and we'll wrap it up. When I say let's, I mean me. I'll do it. I've got some old cabinet hinges that I'm going to use to hinge the roof, reclaimed from my old kitchen. And finally, I'm going to put on a stop so that the roof doesn't fall back when it opens. Alright, there you have it, folks. Somewhat simpler BSFL composter. I love black soldier flies because they do an amazing job composting and turning themselves into food for chickens. I hope that you use soldier fly larvae for your summer composting. That only works here in Georgia when the weather is warmer. Alright, so I'm going to get this thing filled up when the sun's out, and then we'll get these larvae working on some compost in here. The beauty of soldier fly larvae is that they scale based on how much food is available. So they'll keep multiplying as long as there's more food to be had. And so I'm gonna keep them fed so they keep multiplying and my neighbor's chickens enjoy the protein. It's only fitting that the train is about to pull through here in downtown Lilburn, Georgia. I really appreciate you all watching these videos. I'm certainly having a lot of fun making them. As always, our mission here at GreenShortz is to help you see green so you can be green and save a little green by doing it yourself. In this case, I saved a lot of green because I only used stuff that I had laying around, like old roofing, 2x4s, and even a milk jug. If you want to make a soldier fly larva composter for yourself, I actually have the plans for my other model available on my website, and I'll put a link to that right here. Thanks so much for supporting my channel, and I appreciate all the great comments and ideas and suggestions. Thanks for watching. Please like and share and subscribe for a new GreenShortzDIY video almost every Friday.